Well, welcome back. I'm here with Laura Stastny. She is the Executive Director of Nebraska Wildlife Rehab. Laura, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, there is so much going on in your world right now. Let's just talk a little bit about Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, and kind of just tell me the history. I mean, when did this start and why?
Yeah, absolutely. So Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary this year in 2019, so that's exciting for us. And wildlife rehab is around in general because people care about the injured and orphaned wildlife that they find in their communities and needed a way to help it, right? And not everybody's qualified to help wildlife. It's a little bit different than domestic animals. And you also need special state and federal permits to do it.
Right.
And when we think about the wildlife that we get, more than 90% of the wildlife that comes to us because of human action. So intentional or unintentional action that causes an animal to be orphaned, ill, or injured. And so we're out here working with wildlife to kind of mitigate some of the damage that people have done, but also to educate people about how to interact with wildlife in our communities and how to enjoy wildlife, but still make sure that wildlife stays safe in the wild where it belongs.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, whether you're in the city or even in the country, we're constantly interacting with wildlife, whether it's birds or squirrels or, I mean, deer or foxes. I mean, depending on what part of the area you're in, we're a part of their world almost versus them being a part of our world.
Absolutely. And you know, over time, as people have built neighborhoods and cities, certain species of wildlife have really been able to adapt to living in proximity to people in the cities. So you think about raccoons and possums and squirrels. And so we are on their land. But I think that one of the things that we really want people to understand is that there's a way to coexist with wildlife safely and also to enjoy wildlife. It's such an amazing part of this world.
Yes.
So we really hope that through understanding it and knowing wildlife that people will appreciate it and love it as much as we do.
So you have a bat release that's going to be coming up at some point over the next few weeks.
Right.
We're going to talk about that at the end.
Okay.
So, but I just wanted to make sure I put that out there because I didn't want to forget about that.
Okay.
About that piece. But as we've, I've known you for quite a while now, and I've actually called you. Mm-hmm. I have birds in my dryer. There's a squirrel out, a baby squirrel, or I've called somebody from your place, and actually, when I found this baby squirrel wandering in the middle of the street, I took it over to somebody's house where they actually rehabilitated it and was able to let it go.
Right.
But different times of year, depending on the time of year, you have different issues. And right now, it's baby season.
It is baby season now, right?
Yeah.
And strangely enough, it's been a kind of a slow start to baby season. Normally by this time of year, we have a few hundred baby rabbits. We have at least 100 baby squirrels. Baby raccoons are coming in, baby possums are coming in.
Yeah.
All of those animals by April. We're behind pace this year, but a lot of that has to do with weather.
Yeah.
So people weren't outside really until about mid-March. And then the flooding events and the really rapid melting of snow did cause problems for animals that were in dens, which unfortunately means that maybe the first basically round of baby rabbits didn't survive this spring.
Right.
So some of those things conspired against us a bit, or conspired against wildlife. So it's a little bit slower now, but just in the last 72 hours, it's been picking up really fast. So babies are really starting to truck in through the Nebraska Humane Society and through our hotline.
So what do people do? I want to just backtrack for a second to the flooding, because what kind of challenges did you face with all of that? Or what kind of calls were you getting?
Right. So it's pretty tricky when it comes to wildlife because it's treated differently than domestic animals or agricultural animals, right? So we were getting a lot of calls about wildlife that people were spotting stranded in the floodwaters up on high ground. And unfortunately, the authorities aren't going to let us go in on boats to try to get that wildlife off of high ground. But the other issue is this, if you go in to rescue a dog or a cat off of high ground, they're probably going to wait for you. They see people as a savior or someone that they can be around.
Yeah.
But you approach a group of deer on an island where they're safe, they're all going to jump into the floodwaters and probably die.
Yeah.
So you just can't go in and rescue wildlife in that way.
Sure.
And so for a lot of us, the flooding was watching and waiting, and it was pretty excruciating for us because we know that a lot of wildlife didn't survive the massive flooding in our area. But at the same time, it gave us time to focus on our communities and the people that we care about who were impacted by the flood. And so that I guess was a blessing for us.
Yeah.
But now we did have a lot of opossums that were pulled out of floodwater by other rescuers. So people that were going in for dogs and cats did bring us opossums. We also got some squirrels that were baby squirrels that were evacuated out of a flood area. And because we couldn't go back in to give them back to their mother, we kept those.
Yeah.
So we did get some flood refugees, and now we're just kind of picking up with our baby wildlife for the year.
So I want to talk about what should people do when they find wildlife in their yard, babies. I mean, again, there's lots of babies being born,
Right.
and what do you do? Because sometimes people are not so smart.
Right. I mean, sometimes the best thing to do is nothing.
Yes.
A lot of times people will intervene when they think that something is orphaned when it really isn't.
Yeah.
So we always recommend that people go to our website, which is nebraskawildliferehab.org. And there we have just kind of this big, huge drop-down menu of if you found a rabbit, you go do this or whatever.
Right.
But there's the top 3 in the city of baby animals that we see. One of them is people find baby squirrels all the time. If a baby squirrel is a single and it's wandering around, kind of like the one that you found,
Walking down the middle of the road.
walking down the middle of the road,
street.
it's an orphan, right?
Yeah.
Because a mother squirrel's not going to let one baby run around like that. So that's a time when somebody could intervene and bring a baby to us. Another one would be when they find baby birds on the ground. And the most important lesson for people with baby birds on the ground is you don't pick up that baby bird until you've done your research or until you've made a phone call to Nebraska Wildlife Rehab, because baby birds, when they get a little bit older, when they're called a fledgling, they hop out of their nest and they learn how to fly from the ground up. So they might spend a week or 2 on the ground. And while they're on the ground, their parents will come and feed them. And they come by sound, so they call back and forth to their babies and come and feed them. Well, people will go out into their yards and they see a baby bird all by itself and they think immediately that's an orphan and they pick it up. And that's what we call a little bit of kidnapping, bird napping. And so oftentimes we'll ask people to put those birds back. So we ask them to do their research and make sure that they're not picking up a healthy fledgling before they pick up a baby bird. And then the third one is baby bunnies. So oftentimes people find baby bunnies in their yard and they think they haven't seen the mother, so they must be orphaned. Well, rabbits only come to their nest twice a day, and they'll never come to their nest when there's a predator around, and we're predators.
Right.
So we always tell people that if you think that baby rabbits are orphaned, to do a very simple thing. Take some dental floss and make a tic-tac-toe pattern across the top of the nest, and then leave the area overnight. You have to go overnight because usually mother rabbits feed their young at night. If you come back in the morning and that dental floss is moved and the babies are still there, it means the mom's been there. She's moved your dental floss and fed her young, and then she's gone off again. Baby rabbits are only in their nest for 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the season. So it's a very short inconvenience for people to just let those babies raise up on their own and go back into the wild without kidnapping.
Yeah. And I don't know if we have a big deer problem here, but one of the things I've heard for some reason or a story, there's like a little baby deer in the yard, and then people get all crazy. And,
That's a great question. So, and it's really critical with deer because in the state of Nebraska, it's illegal to rehabilitate deer.
Okay.
So if people bring us fawns, we have very few options with them. We're not allowed to raise them by state law. And so what happens is, baby fawns are all spindly legged. They can't run very fast. And so one of the coping mechanisms that deer have is that when their babies are very small, the does will lay their young down in the tall grass and then walk away, and they'll feed for 6 or 8 hours. Periodically, they'll come back, they'll nurse their young, and then they'll leave again. So if you come upon a fawn that's all curled up and is being very quiet and keeping its head down, that's a healthy fawn that's just sitting where mom put it. And we tell people, don't ever touch them, leave them alone. The only time a fawn is actually in danger is if it's wandering around crying and there's no doe with it. But if it's laying quietly, it should always be left alone.
Okay. All right, really good information to have. And I know, like you said, your website, which is
NebraskaWildliferehab.org.
Okay, that you can go and you can search for animals and you can find the different, educational things about if you find this animal, this is what to do.
Exactly.
All right, so we're going to have 2 minutes left on this, and we're going to talk about the Bats Over Omaha bat release that comes up at Jocelyn Art Museum. It's the 10th annual.
It is.
And you kind of don't really, do you even know when it is yet?
No, so bat release is really tricky. So each winter we collect about 300 to 400 bats that should be hibernating, but for some reason have been woken up from hibernation, right? So we have all these bats, and we go and release them, and we invite the public to see that every spring. The trick is we do this when it's best for the bats. This is about the bats and not about the people.
Right.
And the weather, the temperatures have to be good, the winds have to be good, it can't be raining. And so of course we all know how the weather is in Nebraska, particularly this year, right? And so we usually set the date 72 hours in advance. And then we announce it on social media, we put out a press release, and every year people are disappointed because they may have a conflict that day, but we just say, you know what, this is about the bats, come celebrate with us this year, but if you can't, then we guarantee that it'll be here next year, come visit us again. We didn't realize our first year at the Jocelyn Art Museum that it would become such a family fun event. And now we just know that we'll do it every year. And the Jocelyn's been an amazing partner.
So should people just like you on Facebook or be on your e-newsletter, or is that how you alert people?
Right, so e-newsletter, Facebook, we'll announce it on Instagram and Twitter as well, but Facebook usually gets those things first. And then whether the general media generally picks it up every year, but it's much more reliable to come straight to the source and get it from us.
So before you leave, oh gosh, you're moving. We have so much. I could sit here and talk to you for 20 minutes, but I can't talk to you for 20 minutes. That might be a different conversation, but you are needing to move out of your facility in Louisville. So you're looking for a place, and people can help and donate. You're still taking animals. So I mean, your website's like a really big place for people to find out.
Right, we put everything on our website. I mean, what's happening basically is that we have our wildlife center in Louisville, and we did some minor renovations that turned into major renovations. And so we've decided not to invest in that, and we're going to move into the Omaha community. We just don't have a very specific place that we can announce to the public yet. We're working on it. So what we want people to know is that while we're going through this transition, a couple of things are happening. One, we had to launch a capital campaign. We do have funds to purchase a facility in Omaha, but we have a renovation fund. So we have a capital campaign goal of $500,000 for 2019. We took more than 7,000 animals last year, and we just keep growing. So it's the right move at the right time. But we want people to know that it's business as usual for us. We're taking every animal, every phone call. This is our busy season. We can't slow down. So we're still here if people need us. We're still here for the animals. But now we need our community to step in and help us raise the funds that we need to make a specialized facility, because the really cool thing about the Omaha facility is that we will have a veterinary clinic on site. So no more moving our animals around. We'll be able to take care of them right on site with the veterinarian.
All right. Again, so much going on in your world. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, thank you.
I think the big thing is talking about babies and what people can do with that, or do with them when they find them, the bat release, your move. Laura, thank you. We'll have you back on soon, okay?
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
And thank you. And we will be right back.